Hi guys, I am Rich from TrackSpark and welcome to our little mix tutorial. This one's going to be on drums, but before we get into that I'll tell you quickly about TrackSpark. It is a monthly goodie bag for composers and producers which contains around 90 drum loops or more, plus we'll be adding to that with VST instruments, plugins, sample packs, tutorials, stem sessions so you can do your own mixing, all for just $2.99 a month, which is like £2 or something. So check it out, trackspark.com. If you subscribe now you'll get 25% off. So onwards with the tutorial.
Okay, so here we are in the drum session. This is one of the live drum loops from one of the TrackSpark packs. I suppose the first thing to notice, I thought that was quite appropriate, but the first thing to notice is I'm in Cubase Pro. Now don't worry about that, nothing that I'm doing is exclusive to Cubase. So you can apply anything that I'm doing here to the DAW that you're using, whether it's Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, Reason, whatever. Secondly, you'll see quite a few of the plugins that I'm using are Waves and Universal Audio. Don't worry about that. Again, any others, I'm not doing that as an advert for those guys, or you need these plugins or anything like that to get these sounds. They're just the ones I like. So any of the ones that you like, I'm sure will do just as good a job. So a lot of the native plugins that you get with your workstations are wicked as well. Okay, on to the drums. Now you can see all of these chops and slices and edits everywhere. I have quantized this drum track. Only the kick drum. We're at 160 BPM, and I wanted, I think it's good to quantize. At least one element of your drums, I think, should be pretty close to the grid. And I wanted it to be the kick and the snare secondly a little bit, but I've not quantized the hi-hats, I've not quantized any toms. There are no toms in this loop. So that's what all of these splices are. And there are loads of tutorials on the internet about quantizing in whatever workstation you use. If you want us to do it, just send us a message at TrackSpark and I'll put a tutorial up there on how to quantize your drums. No worries. But let's move on. So here's the drum loop. Okay, so it's a nice upbeat punchy drum loop. I'm going to take you through each track, what I've done, and hopefully there'll be some, show you the basics of what to do, plus there'll be a couple of nice little cool tips in there for you as well. If we scroll down, we can see I've got 3 MIDI tracks here. They are extra samples that I've layered up, which is completely not uncommon. So they're there as options. I'm going to mute those out for the time being because we don't want them in anyway while I'm going through it. And here I've got some parallel compression, so I'll mute that as well, and I'll try and explain that to you quickly. You may already know what it is. Right, so kick. I've got my kick, a snare, I've got a mic underneath the snare as well. I've got hi-hats, overheads, room mics and tom mics. So here's the kick. Okay, so if I was to take all of the inserts off, it's sounding a little weak, and you know, most noticeably is the bleed from the snare drum. So firstly, I've stuck a gate on there. Now this is a waves gate, but any gate will do. So I've just set it so that it opens. When the kick is being played and nothing else. And I've set the release to 29. If it was too long, we can still, even though the gate is opening for the kick, it's not closing in time for the snare. So I'm bringing it back down. I've got a bit of tail on the kick, but it's quite a bit, you know, because of the loop itself, it still needs to be quite tight, and I don't want any snare in there, so it's literally, we've just got control over that kick drum. Secondly, I have this, right, 1176 style plugin. Now, I'm not using it for any compression. All of the buttons are out, which means I'm not getting any gain reduction. I'm just using it as a saturator, so just to give us a bit more warmth and fatness. So I'll play it you. It's just making it a bit fatter. We're getting a bit more volume and a bit fatter. So I'm literally just running the signal through this, through all of the you know, the stuff inside it. That's without. That's with, so it's just sounding nice and fat. Okay, then I do have a compressor. But as we can see, it's not doing much. It's not even going to -1. So it's literally just controlling it. And I'm using a compressor to make the level, this, you know, the volume of the kick drum consistent. And it is pretty consistent anyway. You know, the drummer that we used, he's pretty good. So despite, you can see all of these slices here, I won't tell him about that though. Now, yeah, so I'm literally controlling the level of the drum, just the, you know, the very tops of it. And this is quite sort of characteristic of being a nice warm compressor. So again, it's a bit of a fattener, really. I'm controlling it a bit and fattening it up again. So that's with, that's without, with again. Okay. I've got this EQ, and I've got a boost at 60. And which is, gives us a nice bit of sort of fatness. If I was to push it all the way up, we can hear that. So it's distorting there, but that's giving us a nice fatness. And there's really deep, nice and subby, and then you can hear this is where it's really happening. So around 60, but obviously don't want it that high. So I'm just bringing it back down to about 3, just over 3, and it's giving us a nice sort of bit of fatness. And then I've got a boost at 100. I always like 100 for kick drum and bass guitars as well. It gives a nice bit of punch. So that's what that's there for. I've taken some out of the middle just for a bit more clarity. I'm making a bit more room probably for the snare. So one of the most important things, or I think one of the most important things about mixing in general is the shaping. You need to shape your instruments or your drums around each other. So, you know, you're making the best of the elements that you're given. So obviously a kick drum, I want, you know, the bottom end mainly, because that's what kick drum is. So but I need to, it's given us other frequencies as well. I need to make room for the snare, so I'm shaping it. I'm trying to shape it and other drums. I hope that makes sense. And also, I just want to mention balance as well. So balance and shaping, I think, are the most important things in mixing. Anyway, there is a boost here in the upper mids and at 10k. Now I've done this to get the click out of the drum kick, and it just gives us a bit more presence. I don't know what that was. Right, now I've yeah, okay, so the top end is for the click. If I was to take these out, okay, so yeah, if I was to take these out, let's have a listen. Put them back in. We can hear that it's the sort of the clicky sound off the kick drum, and it just gives us a bit more presence and a bit more clarity for that kick drum. Now, this is sort of another EQ, but I've used it more for a bit of character. So the other one was for sort of shaping. This one is for, you know, giving it a bit of coolness. And I have boosted it. It looks a bit weird if you've never seen an EQ like this, but boost it at 60. And I've boosted it at 200. Now I wouldn't always necessarily boost a kick drum at 200. I just did this time. I always like 200 for a snare drum because it gives it a nice bit of punch. And I've obviously done this 200 here just to help the weight of that snare drum. And again, look at 5 just to give us a bit more of that clicky sound. So it just gives us. Here's without, sounding a bit flabby. With it in, just a bit punchier and fatter. Okay, quickly then, moving on to the snare. Now, I have 2 snare tracks. I've got a top and a bottom, and I've routed them both through a group channel here, so that once I'm happy with them, I can then control them with one fader instead of messing around with two each time. And it's just nice to sort of glue them together a little better with a tiny bit of compression. Now, so here's the top. Okay, what I've done there is I've got this 1176, all buttons in this time, which gives us compression plus some really nice distortion. So I'm just using that to warm it up a bit as well. There's not a lot of compression, only on those bits there. So again, it's just controlling the levels of the much harder hits to make it a bit more consistent and giving us a bit of warmth. Now here on EQ wise, I have high passed out above 100 to shape it and give room for the kick drum, and I boost it quite a lot here at, what is this, 2 kilohertz. Now I did this because this is the top mic on the snare drum. I wanted to think, what do I get out of that sort of top skin when I'm hitting a snare? And this at 200 gives us a bit of weight, and here at 2k, it's giving us that nice sort of bite that I'd get from when the stick hits the skin. And I sort of searched around for it. that's what I wanted. I've put a low pass to get rid of those hi-hats. You can hear quite a lot of hi-hat bleed. And obviously kick drum bleed. Now the reason I've not put a gate on this one is because I wanted a bit of ring from the snare. If I put a gate on it, sounds nice and tight, but I wanted a bit more ring and a bit more sort of release on it, just as a character. So I've sort of tried to control the snare drum a bit more by, you know, obviously doing a bit of shaping, but I've taken out the highs and I've taken out the lows to hopefully leave us more of the snare drum of what I wanted from that snare track. Now again, very similarly with the bottom mic on the snare, I've got my compressor, 1176 compressor, and it's squashing it a bit more this time. As we can see, look, if we look at the reduction, it's going down to -7. So you're getting a bit more. We've got a sort of middle of the road attack and release on, and all buttons in means that distortion again. So warmth. Now EQ wise, I've taken out the lows again. Not again, same reason. I've not put a gate on it because I did want some of that sort of ringiness and sort of character from this particular one. So I've taken out the lows. There's a bit more highs in there. I've upper mids. I've boosted it. Now this is for the rattle of that snare. You can really hear that rattle, which is what I want from the underside of it, underneath of a snare. Yeah, so with the top snare, I've not got, almost sounding a bit dull. Mix it in with the bottom. I've got sort of the lows and the punch from the top side, and then I've got the nice sort of presence and crispiness and that rattle from the underneath of it. And like I said, I've grouped them through a group channel. I've added more high-end stuff here, just under 8K, and I've got another compressor on, and it's just, again, look, -1, and it helps to just glue that snare, make it one track. Hi-hats. Almost sounds like a radio there, doesn't it? You know, like an old school radio. So I've taken out everything below 500, and I've boosted it at 6 and at around 18. What is this? 14, sorry, 14.5. Yeah, to make it nice and bright and crisp. And I don't want anything lower than that because there's no need. It's just going to get in the way. Even if there was nothing there, I would still put that high pass on just to make sure nothing was leaking through. And then I put this preamp on, this 610 preamp, and added some distortion. Analog warm distortion. That's without. That's weird. I think hi-hats sound a little messy in sort of tone anyway, almost like they're distorted, so I just wanted to capitalise on that and give them a bit more. And because of that, I put the EQ, then the distortion. I was getting some lows, as we can sort of see here, so I put another high pass on, which hopefully leaves us with nothing but the frequencies that we want. So that is the hi-hats. overhead. Now it's 2 channels. Again, routed them through a group channel, so I can then control both of them as one. If we bring up the actual mixer, we can see here we go, look, in this sort of greeny colour. I've panned them hard left and hard right for my overheads, and I've done nothing else to them, so they're literally sitting there. And then they've gone through my group channel, which I have done something to. I have EQ'd them, and I have got another compressor on. I obviously really fell in love with this LA2A on the day that I was doing this, because it seems to be on most channels. Yes, like I said, it's on most channels. But here we go. Yeah, here's the LA2A. But again, it's not doing loads. It's just going to -1, so almost -2. So I'm just controlling the tops of those waves, and you know, making sure it's a bit more consistent. And I think I obviously like this one because it sort of fattens everything up again. So I was, you know, doing drums, I wanted it to sound a bit fatter. That is why I've done this one. You could use a saturator again, and an EQ. EQ wise, I didn't want the bottom end, I didn't want the lows muddying everything up again, so I have high passed out again, at around 200 there we can see. So that's where I really like the snare, so I've just left that sort of where I like the snare to be punchy, so there's a bit of snare in there, but I've made it nice and bright. I was aiming for, I think, for the rattle again of the snare, which gives a nice bit of presence. It helps it to sort of bite through the mix, punch through. And the hi-hats, I like overheads for hi-hats. No hi-hat, let me just move the room out of the toms. Right, all these EQs, that's better. Now put in the overheads. A bit of character there from the snare, and it's making the hi-hat sound a bit sweeter. Okay, so there we go. Onto the room. Sounds really messy. Okay, so same vibe. I've got nothing happening on the room left and the room right. I've not got them panned too wide, just 28, and they're going through a group channel, so I can control them as one stereo channel. Again, I've got the LA2A. I'm squashing it a little bit more this time, not massive amount. Just look, we're getting to like -4. You know, it's around -3 to -4, so it's a bit more. A bit more warmth, and it's, you know, it's just leveling out that thing. But because I've messed it up, that's why I wanted it to control. I wanted this room to give me some more body in a similar way to parallel compression would. I've added more distortion with this 610 analog warmth. There it is without. We can hear, and also the distortion gives it a wider feel anyway, which is probably why the panning is, you know, it's not extreme. I've then EQ'd it. I've left a bit more lows in this time, just to give it a bit more, I suppose, a bit more fatness. I've made it bright, and left it generally as it is, really. Look, I've just taken the bottom out just to make sure nothing muds over. Here it is with. Without. So it's quite a nice clean sound without. add it, it gives it a bit more, you know, texture and fatness. Wow, sounds good there. Just a bit too dirty, so I'm going to bring it down. Okay. Toms. We've not got any toms. But again, I'm using it as a bit of colour. You can do this or not. I just liked it. I've done this. It sounds really horrible and muddy. I've taken out the really lows and I've boosted it at 150 and then left it. Oh. So it sounds quite weird and almost like it's in a tunnel. But without. Just gives us a bit more flavour. I quite like it. I'm going to leave it. So that is the general gist of the drums. Now, a couple of quick extra things here. Each of these tracks are my kick drum, there's only one, and my snare group, my hi-hat, overhead group, room group, and my tom group are all routed through a drums bus here, as we can see. Okay, just for control, if I was in, you know, I just want it, if I was in a proper, you know, full session with guitars and everything, I want to be able to control it. Plus, I want to be able to send it to other things like parallel compression, and it's much easier to do if everything's going through one. Okay, I've got a few bits on the main drum bus, but I won't go into those quite yet. Here's a little trick for you. We'll go into these little extras now, so the layering up. Firstly, I've got a kick sub on my kick. That's without, with, so it gives us a nice bit of weight. Now what I've done here is got two things which you should have in all your DAWs: a test generator and a gate. And the gate is set to sidechain mode. You should have this little button on all of them. Okay, so we set the gate up in the second position of the insert chain and test generator in the first. So if there was no gate on, it would just be making this tone. Right, and it's a sine wave, and I've set it to 50 Hertz. You could set it to 40 Hertz. It's really deep. Depends on, you know, what you're trying to get. It's really stuffy, that one. So I wanted 50. That helped give us, you know, the best result for this. Put on your gate in sidechain mode, and if you then go to your kick drum, sends sidechain. So I've put it on sidechain, I've turned it on, I've turned up the level, so the signal, oh crikey, don't want that to, I want it to be 0, that's it. So because of the sidechain, when the signal from the kick drum, you know, happens, it is then triggering the sub, and the gate is set up with the release that I want, and it opens when I want as well. Boom, 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 boom. So without it, just gives us a nice bit of, you know, those really low frequencies. It gives it a bit more weight. Okay. Similarly, I've got 3 MIDI tracks here. I'll start with this one. I've called it Ringy Snare. is a bit ringy and it's got a nice bit of rattle on it, which are the two characteristics I wanted. I said I wanted some ringiness, so I used something that was a bit ringy, and it's also got a bit more sort of presence on the rattle. I've not overused it. That's without. That's with. So again, it's just giving us a bit more colour to the snare. It's not adding any more punch. It's just a bit more colour, a bit more ringiness there, and a tiny bit more presence. I have BFD here. You can see. I think it's just on one of the presets. I'm only using it for kick and snare. And it's quite a roomy sound. There's nothing. Solo that. So it's just giving us a bit more room again, so more depth. We've got the closeness from, you know, the individual mics up here. I'm just using this as a bit more depth and character and texture. So let's see what that sounds like. Down. Okay, same reason, same thing, same attempt, same thing with this vintage drummer. Let's pop it up. I've just got the snare, but everything else muted, and I've left the overheads, so it should be a roomy sound. Very flat. You know, uninteresting, doesn't sound good at all, but it's, again, mix it in with what I've got. And I've not messed with the EQs. I've got a bit of saturation, a lot of saturation happening on this one. On that, back that off so that it's not to give it a bit more warmth. Might just take the low right out there. Real lows out. Okay, it's just there for flavour. You might want a clean sound. But I like it. Finally, parallel compression. Now, again, there are loads of tutorials on how to do parallel compression. I can go into it more depth if you want. Again, hit us up at TrackSpark. I will just show you. I've set up an individual channel with a compressor on it. It is a Fatso compressor, but whatever compressor you like. And I've battered it. It's on full setting. It's on spank. Look. So it's compressing the hell out of it. I've got quite a bit of warmth coming out of it. So it's a compressor and a saturator. So I'm getting some colour, some, you know, distortion, warmth, and I'm compressing the hell out of it. Now I'm then sending my drums bus, my main drum bus. I'm sending it to my drums parallel. We can see if I'm on my drums now, I've sent it. Boosh. I've sent it to my drums parrot. Yeah. Got fatness and warmth and colour. Without. With. So just making it fat. I've got to ramp it up. I don't want it that much, so I'll put it down there. I've got, again, you've got my LA2A on the main mix. Just giving it more warmth. And it's gluing it all together. Again, not massive. Look, -1. Not doing anything spectacular. It's just giving it a warmer sound. But that is on the master. Don't worry about that if you're in another session. If you've got drums and bass and everything like that, you might have that as a master on everything anyway, or a different one. But I just wanted to glue the drums together a little bit, so that's what that is for. Right. There we go. There we have it. I hope there was some, decent stuff in there, some little tips and tricks for you, and some general sort of basics of what to do when mixing drums. You can apply a lot of this to, sequence drums and other instruments as well. Thanks for listening. I hope you listen next time.